And you're very welcome back. We are edging ever closer towards the Super 8s being finalised in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship. 2 spots remaining in either group, and we know who'll be going where by about 4 o'clock on Sunday next. But to look back on the last batch of qualifiers that we've just had, and to look ahead to what may come in round form, joined on the line by ex-Tyrone footballer Enda McGinley and also former Meath captain Anthony Moyles. Good evening to you both, gentlemen.
Good evening.
Evening, Moyles. How are we doing? Enda, we'll start off with yourself, because I know you were at Newbridge on Saturday evening. Compared to the events of a year ago, what happened, coincidentally enough, to Mayo down in Newbridge, it seemed completely at odds with the occasion, with the outcome, with absolutely everything. It seemed completely different, a 180 to what we had last year. Yeah, certainly Tyrone would have been very thankful that they didn't roll into the storm that Mayo rolled into last year. Sometimes teams need a fire and a cause to fight for, and they get to another level because of that. Kildare have been struggling this year. Obviously, have lost a couple of key personnel this year, and the whole Newbridge thing. The game was fixed straight away from for Newbridge, and so there was no cause, no fire. And to be honest, and to be frank, I suppose their performance maybe epitomised that too. They seem to be just going through a run-of-the-mill performance, whereas Tyrone, and I've seen Tyrone sort of several times, seen them against Longford, and the step change in their performance was remarkable to see, and they send out a real reminder. But the caveat to their really strong performance was the fact that Kildare just didn't really seem to hit top gear at all. But you're measured by these teams that you actually managed to put away, and Tyrone still managed to put in a performance in dispatching Kildare in rather fine style as well. And when Tyrone fire so far this season, they seem like one of the most enjoyable sides to watch. It's been not a remarkable turnaround essentially in terms of tactics, but Mickey Harte has tweaked things enough that he's made this Tyrone side go from being, I suppose, the pariahs of football and sitting 14 men behind the ball into one of the most watchable outfits we've had in this year's championship.
Yeah, it is that sort of evolution that this defensive game is going through now. I still think it can throw up terrible phases of play and terrible games if both teams set up very, very defensively. But most times now, there's enough difference tactically in a game that there is really open phases of play. I think the addition of Cavan McShane to Tyrone's previous defensive and counter-attacking game plan has really changed things up. I think it makes it gives opponents a real headache, because it very much stretches them. Tyrone then suddenly have a depth to their attack that the opposition have to cover, and if they can't let everybody up the field and attack onto Tyrone's running game at them is more effective, and there's always that threat from inside too. So I think Cavan McShane's influence has meant that Mickey has went back to a plan that he had left. He had departed from the defensive game plan last year in the All-Ireland semi-final, particularly the All-Ireland final, because he had seen it was not working against Dublin. The question is now, does he think, is this a game plan to get him towards Dublin, and will he tweak it again for playing Dublin, or does he think the addition of Cavan McShane and that full forward line threat and target man, is that enough of a difference to bring the original defensive game plan back to Dublin?
Yeah, I mean, he was asked about it as well after Saturday's game, and it seemed to rankle with him a little bit that he thinks that he can go back to Croke Park now when the Super 8s are all around and actually make this game plan work and hammer out results against the sides against whom that this possibly didn't work a year ago and 2 years ago.
Yeah, and look, with all due respect to everybody within the draw, Mickey Harte will always be thinking about a chance to win the All-Ireland title, and looking at the way the draw has worked out, playing Cavan in the next round, a team that Tyrone wouldn't really fear. They'll give due respect to, but wouldn't really fear, and that throws them into a qualifying group, a Super 8 group, with yes, Dublin, but then Roscommon, Cork, Laois, and well, Tyrone if they've taken care of Cavan, and that from a Tyrone point of view would look like a brilliant ticket to get to an All-Ireland semi-final, where you would be playing either Kerry or Donegal, and again, they are not Dublin. And I think any of them top 3-4 teams fancy themselves against anybody else bar Dublin, and the way the draw has worked out now for Tyrone, I think Mickey Harte quietly will be thinking he's going to get another crack on the biggest stage of all this year.
Anthony, I want to bring you in here. I want to get your, I suppose, outside view of how Tyrone have been progressing so far this year. Have they changed enough that they can affect something more and go slightly closer to Dublin than they did 12 months ago?
Well, I like the way Enda has written off the other two potentials on the other side. Straight in with Kerry and Donegal. I've really been really impressed with them. really their bounce back after the Donegal defeat, which I think, people probably read into it a bit too much. They lost P.T. Harte that day early, and I've often said he's the heartbeat of the team. He's a spiritual leader on that team, and so much it revolves around him. He gets involved so much, be it from a defensive standpoint, tackling back, work rate, an offensive standpoint. He's just essential to the setup. The one thing I probably questioned was, I suppose, the thing that they brought at the weekend, which was they were able to go to a plan B. And the plan B was yes, a tip of the hat back to what they were kind of doing last year, much more of a running game, much more of a power game. Whereas, we saw the evolution which Enda has referred to there, and has referred to on numerous occasions on the show, where during the league this year they were kicking the ball a lot more. They were making use of the mark inside. It was very, very evident that they were saying, listen, with McShane in there, can we have an ability that we can kick in, get marks, get runners off them, or just actually settle and take our shots? Also, the aspect of taking a bit more of a long range shot. So I think, Harte has some very, very smart people around him. Fellas who would think long and hard about the game, fellas who are very, very smart playing the game, and he himself obviously is tactically and everything else, he's so nuanced. So it doesn't surprise me to see them coming, and actually, they're a team that have developed, and that they seem to kind of revel in the qualifiers as well. When they go into it, they just get stronger and stronger, and the momentum comes. The next thing, fellas come from who are kind of in the lower regions of the panel, the next thing they're starting and they're staking claims. So it's definitely they're not a team that you want. We were looking at it from a Meath perspective, and looking at it from some of the other guys, you'd be saying to yourself, well, we definitely don't want to be pulling Tyrone out here, because these are the fellas who are really top of their game, who don't seem to have a massively long injury list like a la Mayo. And who are really, playing at an optimum level, and look like they're only going to get stronger, to be honest.
And looking ahead, where can Tyrone be most troubled by Cavan in that qualifier next weekend?
Again, if Cavan go to town like Donegal did and completely shut down the Cathal McShane route at full forward, I think that puts Tyrone back reliant again on their running game. They were definitely doing that much, much better against Kildare. But there's still players there trying to get back into form. Tiernan McCann's now going to be available to come back in. Will he start in front of Frank Burns or Michael Cassidy, that dropped out somewhat controversially against Donegal, but played well against Kildare? So there's still an element of Tyrone finding their form. So Cavan will be hoping that it was more about Kildare's poor performance. Honestly, I can't explain it. I've been thinking about it plenty, but in the first 5 minutes against Kildare, allowing it was early in the game, there was players like, I remember Matty Donnelly getting on the ball, and he moved with a pace and a sharpness across the ground and turned that I haven't seen him doing it in 3-4 games. So how Tyrone can suddenly make that change in a week or two? We know that a lot of these bigger teams would have been targeting their whole season's training, their whole conditioning for around the Super 8s, hoping that they could avail a big or avoid a big banana skin and manage to get to the Super 8 and have timed their conditioning for that. If that's what we're seeing from Tyrone, it's a remarkable bit of training, because there was a complete step change just in the pace that Tyrone brought against Kildare. And that's nothing really to do with Kildare. That's just looking at physically how Tyrone were moving. If Tyrone bring that game against Cavan, I struggle to see how Cavan are going to deal with that. Tyrone are still really solid at the back, and going back to that defensive style suits them. They are really, really difficult to break down. Cavan had them 2 fantastic games against Armagh, but we know that Armagh's bringing this really open, brilliant, very, very attractive style of football, but not as defensively solid as what Tyrone are going to play against Cavan. And Cavan, although they hit up that brilliant score against Armagh in the replay, and scored heavily, funny enough, against Donegal, you still look at their forward line and you struggle to see sort of top forwards. Tyrone, of course, maybe you could say similar about them. They're using a lot of midfielders and half backs now converted into a proper forward line. but it's their attacking game and their use of Cathal McShane is allowing them to post a very, very heavy score against Kildare with ease and with some serious quality. So for me, I just struggle that Cavan are going to break down Tyrone in any serious way because of that sort of very mature Tyrone defensive system that they've went back to. And I think Tyrone's running game and the Cathal McShane factor has got them attacking much more potently than they have done so far this year.
Moyles, have Cavan got enough to stop the Cathal McShane focal point element of Tyrone's game, or did they just have to basically focus on their own heading into this game on Saturday evening?
Well, again, and like, Enda referred to it there, how much of it was Tyrone, how much of it was Kildare. Kildare, I think they only got three scores from their inside forward line. They ended up being unbelievably frustrated. They got some Hail Mary scores from the two boys in midfield who put in a massive amount of work and two great performances. But, like I've often said this, Leinster teams outside of Dublin setting up against Ulster teams, they have always struggled in the last number of years. Meath have struggled, Kildare have struggled, Laois, Westmeath have struggled. And the reason being is that they're just not used to it. It's usually a kind of a shootout when Leinster teams get involved. They have a few sweepers back, or they might just bring the half forwards back. But it's never a setup like they'll come up against, say, for example, against Tyrone, where, it's very disciplined, it's very zonal. They have man markers, but they have zonal guys as well. Everyone knows their role. Everyone knows, well, if you're going on the last run, I'm going on this run. It's massively disciplined. They don't give frees away cheap. They very, very rarely let the ball go inside without collapsing onto the ball. So Cavan, though, will bring a different proposition than Kildare will. Cavan will be quite happy to actually stand outside that and let Tyrone come out a bit, and try to actually, get runners off the shoulder and try to win frees by, kind of targeting soft shoulders of some of the Tyrone lads. They'll be ready for it because they're just more used to it. They've played against it a lot more than some of the Leinster teams. So it'll be interesting to see can Cavan get a fast start. If they can get a fast start, that will bring Tyrone out a bit more. But just as Enda says there, I just think Tyrone, they have a way of working you out. And although I think I would write Cavan off at my peril, because I think they've showed enough this year, and I think Mickey Graham is a fantastically good manager. I think he's a very, very smart manager, and I think the tactical battle will actually be really, really brilliant. And people should get around. This may actually end up being a low-scoring game. And people should just, not go on about defensive football. Like, sometimes tactics have to, dictate how things go. And these teams, if I was Mickey Graham, you're saying to yourself, well, listen, we have to make sure McShane, we have to put an X on him straight away. We have to maybe, make them run at us. And then what we have to do is we have to try to snag them. We have to try to get bodies around, stop the run, and then look to turn them over ourselves, because Cavan has plenty of pace and they've plenty of fellas who can kick points, similar to Tyrone, from cornerback, halfback, and they're not necessarily relying on just one or two forwards up front.
And as Anthony mentioned there, it could well be a low-scoring affair, but it is an all-Ulster clash, and the Ulster Championship this year has been, in terms of entertainment, the saving grace of this year's football championship, because it's given us the tighter matchups, the more entertaining games, and we could well be set for one of these come Saturday as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And in fairness, the general quality of the qualifiers is probably, ironically, that we're talking towards changing the whole thing again next year. But the qualifiers this year, for me, has probably been one of the best that we've had in years. You think of the Mayo Down game, even Derry Laois was a great game up in Owen Beg and got a great crowd. Armagh Mayo, obviously, they're at the weekend too. Monaghan, Armagh as well. There's been a series of really, really good games, and yes, Ulster teams have been prominent in that. There's a real sort of mix of styles happening in Ulster at the minute, which is sort of a microcosm of what's happening in the game generally. And there's no absolute standout teams. There's a couple of good teams that are at a similar level, and there's a good group of coming teams, and underneath that, the likes of Armagh, Down and Cavan all got serious momentum this year. So with all of that mix, it's great times. Cavan, Tyrone's going to go again at it. Tyrone would be pretty confident of that, but equally out west they've had a pretty good championship as well this year, and they're going to get Mayo Galway. I was reading a thing today, I haven't got to check it out, but it could well be true. It's the first time Mayo and Galway have met in a knockout game since something like 1999, which is just phenomenal. So the tension and atmosphere that's going to be there is brilliant. The other two games are exceptionally even too. So the irony of us departing from the qualifiers, or looking to depart from the qualifiers at a time when they've really chucked up some brilliant football this year.
Are you surprised that there's not been enough talk and enough discussion around the potential changes? Like, everybody, I guess, has their own vision of what the championship should be going forward, but I don't think there's been much discussion of the fact that, is there not elements of this that absolutely need preserving? That there seems to be an awful lot being let go by the wayside here.
I'm very worried that this has got an unstoppable momentum, and I don't think we're really going to sit down and look at it. I would have been, ironically, I've sort of had a changeover in my own thought process. I would have been in favour of tiering just from the natural logic of it and seeing these beatings happening at times. But to be honest, if we're looking at the overall health in the game, I think the healthiest, most ideal situation long term for the game is to have as many counties as possible up at a similar level, and that all counties are driving towards being at the top, or that dream of managing to win the top. Is that more or less likely bringing in this system that we're heading towards? I think it's far less likely. I think as soon as you divide up the teams and have the top teams playing against each other and the bottom teams playing against each other, I think naturally the top teams will drive each other on and on and on at a greater rate and a faster rate, and that difference will become greater. And over time then the chance of ever one of the lower teams being able to catch up and make the jump up is less. Increasingly, I would have liked to see something done with the whole structure of funding and the whole push of games development in the other counties, so that we get them up, even if it means curtailing the top counties in terms of money that they have to contribute into the system, and that money goes down to the other counties to get them up. I think if we can level the playing field across more counties than just looking for this top elite group, I think long term, in 10 years' time, that would be a better situation to be chasing down.
Yeah, Anthony, this sense of inevitability that this change in this tier championship is going to come, surely that sense of inevitability should sit not that well with a lot of people.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Richie, and it's probably, it's like a lot of things in the GAA. Sometimes they kind of get spoken about in smoke-filled rooms, and it's kind of like, set it in a corner. Next thing, it just starts to, once it passes that, it starts to grow legs, and next thing you know, it's just the norm. And people are kind of like, oh, right, well, that's coming in. And, and I suppose because the president is driving it so hard, it seems to definitely be, kind of at the forefront of his agenda. The fixtures committee are in there, and he's kind of put the cart before the horse to a certain degree, because he's saying, well, literally, I want this to come in. And then he's kind of saying, well, they have an agenda now and they have something to aim towards. But, I think you can't to sort out the club scene, and, we won't go there tonight, but to sort out the fixture mess and everything else that is there, you have to have the inter-county sorted out. So you have to be able to either create space in the calendar or do whatever is required by finishing it earlier or whatever it is. There's lots and lots and lots of different things that need to be done. But you would think that, creating a situation where you have two tiers and ultimately creating a them and us, I can see where some people who are pro this would love the situation where, well, there's something to aim for. So, when you look at the hurling situation, you've got Laois at the weekend, the celebrations that they had. You've got Meath with the Christie Ring. You've got teams who are not just being knocked on their behinds and they're gone and they're kind of wallowing around until the following year. You've got something for them to go for, some form of silverware. And once they get over their initial disappointment, they're able to go and aim and look to improve. And that's all you're looking for. You're looking for improvement and you're looking for competition. And Enda refer to games there. And the reason is because games are being competitive. They're entertaining because they're competitive. You've got teams that are, maybe one is a Division 1 team, but they have to go to the Division 2 or the Division 3 team's home venue. And even with that, you get the crowd. It's worth a few points to the home team. And you might have a big team after just being knocked out of a provincial final or semi-final by a shock, and it carries its own kind of weight and story. To be honest with you, I flip every week on this. Is it? Someone said this morning maybe it should be provincials or earlier on in the year, and then you go into a Champions League style, so everyone gets at least 3 games, and then you can have top tier, second tier. 16 go into the bottom, 16 go up to the top, and maybe that's something, and you can have seeding throughout the league or whatever it is. But there is a solution, but I definitely think kind of, railroading or just kind of shoving one kind of an idea down because it's the perceived way to go is not the way to do it. I still think that you have to go in with a blank canvas, and this is something that the CPA have been saying, Jesus, I don't know how many years now saying it, but you just go in with a blank canvas and you start and you say, right, we need to have a look at this and then try to fit all the pieces in. And if that takes a couple of weeks, so what? Because as Enda says, it's every year, and every couple of years there's something new, and then it's just railroaded in really quickly. And then there's, all the unintended consequences that obviously falls out of that. And you're going to have a bit of that, but at least get, a consensus, and let's try to at least debate it. And then let's say, okay, well, we have the majority behind this. We're going to give it a go and see how it goes. But the funding part that Enda refers to there is the big part. Because you cannot allow the behemoths to continue to grow from private funding and sponsorship and everything else, which is essentially being fed down into the system, and have the counties that are wallowing and aren't getting that many appearances, so therefore they're not going to have the big sponsors. So they're relying on Croke Park to give them funding to enhance the game at underage level. You have to have some kind of a central system whereby the people that need it, the counties that need it, are getting that bit more, and if they're supplemented by the bigger fellas, well then, so be it. Because that's the only way really, and that, by the way, takes 10 to 15 years to really see the fruition of that. It takes a long time. That's not going to be an easy fix. And neither, by the way, is creating a top tier or second tier. That's not going to be an easy fix. As a matter of fact, it's not going to fix it really at all. You have to start at the bottom. You have to start at the juvenile level, and you have to get those structures in place and put a plan in place for all of that, and then see how it runs over after, unfortunately, a long period of time.
I feel we'll be coming back to this one more and more over the course of the next couple of months, but we have to talk about Mayo as well. The constant narrative across pretty much every match report end I've read about this one, and having watched it as well on Saturday evening, is Mayo never make things easy for themselves. Typical Mayo. They're constantly making a rod for their own back. There were 5 points clear, as James Horan was wont to point out, with 10 minutes to go in Castlebar on Saturday, and conspired to let Armagh come within a kick of the ball of levelling the match and forcing extra time. They are entertaining, but by God, if you are a Mayo person, you've got to be pulling the last of whatever hair you have left out.
They're entertaining, and unfortunately it's in an era where football is more controlled than the top teams. Dublin, I suppose, the top team is able to control a game in a way that we have never seen before, and yet Mayo it is just spectacular entertainment, but is so far from control. Many aspects of the performance was exceptionally impressive. The fact that they'd lost, obviously, Dermot, and they'd lost Lee Keegan early doors, and Andy Moran was taken off early. That was a massive challenge. Then Armagh were definitely playing good football and had them pinned back. So there was plenty of reasons there that they might wobble and they might go out, yet they dug deep and came back and produced some brilliant football. It was a very open game of football. But in terms of them being All-Ireland contenders, you would just love to see, people would always talk about other teams, say they talk about Tyrone or they talk about Donegal, they talk about any sort of seriously experienced side that you know how to eke out a win, that you know how to control a game. It's one of the key facets of any top teams. You see even top club teams having that ability to control or to manage a game. Mayo don't look to manage the game, although I suppose just as I'm saying that, the last 5-10 minutes they were carrying out plenty of actions that I would sort of surmise was very much about killing any momentum or trying to kill time in the game. So at least they showed a bit of nuance there. But in terms of where this team can go, again, they picked up another few further injuries. You just feel, as bigger warriors and as great as they have been to watch for so long, and as impossible it is to write them off, you just think, how can they keep going through these sort of games and keep surviving? I would imagine Galway must be relishing getting another crack at them, and again in a big knockout game. That's a massive game.
Anthony, as much as Mayo's and talk around Mayo is defined by them versus an All-Ireland title and how the two might relate and whether or not they're able to win one, we surely still have to look at this Mayo team, given the influx of new players up since the start of the league and it's continued throughout the championship. and the fact that injuries have started to take their toll as well, we still have to look at them as a work in progress, and very much so.
Oh, I think so, Richie. Yeah, and you know, you lose the players of the calibre that they lost on at the weekend, like Andy Moore and Lee Keegan, and they're in a situation where, you know, you are starting to delve into that panel. Then you ally that with obviously the injuries that they've had to fellas who have really started to shine this year, like Horan and fellas like that. And next thing you're delving even more into the panels. But you know, the people. There's always, I suppose, there is a lightning rod on Mayo. Whether they ask for it or not, sometimes they do ask for it. Sometimes they don't. The whole, you know, I suppose there's a love-hate relationship with plenty of people in the country with regard to them. Some would love to see them do it, some would hate to see them do it. And you have a situation where no matter when they play or who plays, there's always going to be question marks. So, you know, a couple of weeks back it was, you know, there's a lot of fighting going in the panel. Then it was all about the training methods, that they're beating each other up, you know, and there's fellas getting laid out everywhere, and this is what's causing the injuries. You know, it's kind of funny. You just don't hear those stories coming out of other panels. You never hear them coming out of Dublin. You never hear them coming out of Tyrone. You don't hear them coming out of Donegal. Like, it's nearly like, I don't know if the media is just focused on it, or if there's someone touting the media down there. It just seems that there's always drama around the squad, and the funny thing is it's exactly like the way they play. There's drama in how they play. They don't, you know, as Enda was saying, they don't manage games. They don't sit back. They don't create it. Like at 5 points up 10 minutes ago, you'd say, right, lads, we're 5 up here. We're going to put 13 men behind the ball, and we're just going to smother Armagh. We're on our home patch. Smother it. Do all the other stuff that people have alluded to over the last few days, taking time out, slowing down the kickouts, you know, fellas going down. But we're going to smother it as well. But instead, it's gung ho. It's like you score, we score, you know, and it's crazy stuff. It's very, very entertaining. But you know, I think, you know, Horan is in there. He's bringing back his own stamp, and he has to bring a new stamp to it after Rochford. He has to try to do something different. I think he has unearthed a few really, really good players. Whether they have enough for Galway, with what has been, you know, a very trying past few weeks with them, especially on the injury front, I don't know. I agree with Enda. I think Galway will be licking their lips. I don't think Galway are a finished article at all, though, by the way. I think, you know, although they've had a bit of time now to get themselves together, I'm just not that enamoured by Galway. And actually, you know, Mayo could rise themselves for it, and could go out under shield, and they may actually go in. And you know what? If they ended up then in the Super 8s, they'll get their pomp back, they'll head back into Croke Park, and they'd be a very dangerous animal. You know, absolutely they would.
As you mentioned, they're missing a few key men going into that game against Armagh in Castlebar last Saturday, and of course Lee Keegan suffering that injury. Andy Moran pulled off 3 minutes before half time as well. After the game, James Horan wasn't happy with the suggestion that the spate of injuries has had something to do with the way he trains the side.
If you're reporting stuff, surely you'll do a bit of research yourself. Come to training. We've never stopped anyone coming to training, lads. I think it's.
Those comments are why did the marker say?
Come to training.
I'll come.
People come commenting on stuff, and it's absolutely ridiculous. We play a games-based approach at our training sessions where we play games, and it's a team sport with 30 people on the field, so there's going to be injuries. So some of the commentary that has been reported back to me is we have a good laugh at it when we hear it, to be honest.
Does it annoy you? Does it annoy you, James?
What's that?
Does it annoy you?
I think if people are making comments, that try and get some detail or try and get some evidence behind it.
There you go. That's James Horan speaking after Saturday's game at McHale Park. And here's what Liam McHale had to say about Horan's reaction when he spoke to OTBAM this morning.
He's not happy there, James Horan, at the idea that perhaps the training is responsible for some of Mayo's recent injuries.
And we've heard these rumours that there's a bit of dissension in the camp, and some of the senior players are not happy. But you know, like Lee Keegan's injury now looks like a bad ankle injury. You know, Harrison was the same, so you can't really relate them to the type of training they're doing. And you know, once you go into the qualifier zone, you wouldn't be doing a hell of a lot of training anyway. You know, you're playing pretty much week in, week out, and you know, you get a recovery session in, you get hopefully a good practice in it, and then you have a game at the weekend. So I wouldn't really have anything to do with. I wouldn't put the training sessions down to that. I would imagine, though, with the influx of young players coming into the group, that their in-house games would be very physical and very aggressive, and maybe some of the injuries have come from that. You know, young Rowan's injury. You know, Dermot O'Connor's wrist. Those type of injuries might be physicality injuries. Fellas really pushing hard to make their plays. But a lot of this stuff is just unfortunate, and you know, Mayo are banged up now at the moment, and they're struggling a little bit. But you know, as they have in the past, when they're showing their heart, and you know, they played a very good Armagh side at the weekend. They were completely in control of the game, and for some strange reason, they seemed to lose their way. Had a couple of really bad turnovers and let Armagh back into it, but they found a way to win, and they're in the draw again this morning. You know, so you know, you have to hand it to them. They've got great heart and great desire to make it to the Super 8. You know.
Liam McHale there on OTBAM, and Off the Ball is brought to you by Avantcard, powered by MasterCard. Mayo, should they come through Galway, Anthony, will be in a group with Donegal, Kerry and either Meath or Clare. What are your thoughts on the potential of your former county or your current county reaching that Super 8 group against Clare?
Yeah, it's probably, you know, again, all respect to Clare, but it's probably the one that Meath people would have wanted. So yeah, they've looked out with regard to that. Now I'm sure Clare people are loving that comment, but you know, but Clare were impressive at the weekend. They bet a Westmeath side who I actually fancy to win that game. Now John Heston was a big loss for Westmeath. You know, gone after 4 or 5 minutes. A talisman like that, a guy who just, you know, his scoring rate for them is prolific. He's a leader, and it'd be the same kind of equivalent if Gary Brennan was lost for Clare. You know, that kind of Clare for the squad. But they were impressive. You know, they've got some nice players up front. They scored well. Meath met them in the league. Obviously, they went down there this year in the league, and they gave them a bit of a pasting. So, you know, Clare, I'm sure, will learn a lot from that. The game is on in Portlaoise. I think that'll suit Meath and Meath, but I think it comes down to it's the psychological effect, I suppose, Richie, of the Dublin game. You know, Meath here in the county, we've had hurling championship this weekend. We spoke about that last week, but you know,
I read about that in the Meath Chronicle somewhere. Yeah,
there was something about it. But they'll have to obviously assess and hope that no one has come through that with any injuries. But then the repair work is literally all going to be about getting their heads together now. And actually, as a matter of fact, and I said this on the night, you know, obviously I was pretty frustrated and, you know, kind of down when I was at the game and doing it for News Talk. But when I reflected on it, we did an awful lot of good things right in the game, and especially the first 40-45 minutes. Like, they did a lot of stuff right, defensively wise, and I don't just mean the six backs. I mean from, you know, the corner forward back. You know, they frustrated Dublin. They sent Dublin into areas where they wanted to send them, yeah, you know, okay, Dublin missed a penalty, but you know, the shot selection was poor from Meath. Just the extra pass that was required. A little bit of, you know, kind of composure, a bit more composure was required, and you know, people will focus straight in on the four scores, but the fact that you got 12 wides and another 4 or 5, you know, kind of, well, 3 or 4 off the post and 1 or 2 short. Now, I'm not saying they would have all went over, but when you're in those situations, I kind of said this prior to the game, you have to make use, and you have to make good use of all of those scoring opportunities against Dublin. You have to, you know, get it to the right men in the right position. Dublin do that better than anyone. You know, they don't take shots from outside the D. They always work it in. Jack McCaffrey is just the epitome of that. You never see the guy taking a shot outside 30 yards. He uses his pace, he goes in, he either fists it over the bar or just clips it or hands it to a forward. And they're the things that this Meath team have to realise, that there's fellas on the pitch to do the scoring, and that you would hope to do. Now, unfortunately, they had lads who usually score who were just off that day. Now, you know, could they have bet Dublin? No, they wouldn't have. But would they be in a situation where actually, if they look at it now and they analyse it and they go, listen, you know, we did a lot of good things right. We have to do that again, and then we have to add on the scores, and we have to take our chances a bit better. We have to spread the ball a bit better, show a bit more composure. And I think if they get in that frame of mind, Richie, and they manage to get over Clare, which won't be easy, like Clare, they're on merit, absolutely. But if they can do that, it'll give them a nice bit of confidence to go into the Super 8, and that will be progress, massive progress for the year.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much, Anthony, and thanks so much, Enda McGinley, as well, for taking time out this evening to speak to us both.
Thanks.
Cheers, lads. There you go. Last month, we were live in Cork, we should say, at St Finbarr's in association with Super Value. And now we are heading north to Cumann Luclasclail, Guidor in Donegal on Wednesday, the 10th of July. We'll be talking all things Super 8s, Donegal and Ulster football. Nathan Murphy in his championship haircut will be joined by guests Eamon McGee, Kevin Cassidy and Brendan Devaney, and we'll be announcing more names over the next few days as well. This is an exclusive off-air event, so the only way to enjoy it is to be there on the night, and you can be there by getting your tickets now on offtheball.com/events. That's offtheball.com/events. It's all with thanks to Super Value. We'll have more after this.